Why did gamers start donating to games? Many continue to spend a lot of money on opening cases and knocking out characters, but they condemn casinos and bets. But are they any different? Today, we will figure out how gamers came to the point where they quietly empty their wallets on donations in games that are worse than in casinos. Write in the comments how much money and in which game you donated. First, let's imagine the picture. You launch the game, it is free, it would seem. Colorful interface, exciting gameplay, and everything is great. But then an extremely tempting offer appears in front of you. Open a case, a chance for a legendary item. And it seems like a trifle, just $1. Big deal. You can do it once. But then the second, third, fourth. And at some point you notice that you are spending more and more. And now you go to the game store, not just like that, but with a clear goal. Well, this time it will definitely fall out. This is not a new story. But if you rewind 10 years ago, this did not happen. Yes, there were add-ons, there were paid DLCs, there were even purchases of in-game currencies. But with the purpose of buying a specific item and not getting a chance to knock out something good, in the minds of gamers, there was no feeling that they were obliged to pay so as not to feel inferior. So where did all this come from? To answer this question, you need to delve into psychology. Donations are not just a waste of money, these are emotions, anticipation, excitement, a desire to stand out. And all this is reinforced by the so-called FOMO, fear of missing out. You see how your friend got an exclusive gun. It shines, sparkles, gives a bonus, and you, without it, and you can no longer play calmly because in your head is spinning, what if I get lucky too? Gaming companies understand this. They build entire monetization systems so that the player feels a free game is just bait, the main content is paid, or even worse, for a random fee. That is, you don't know what you're going to get. You're buying a chance. That's the key. Look at the cases in CS2, the banners in Genshin Impact, the battle passes in Fortnite or Apex Legends. They all give you content in chunks. They promise incredible rewards if you invest a little bit, and then again and again and again, and you're no longer a gamer, you're an investor in your luck. The game turns into a slot machine, but here's the irony. Most players still don't consider it gambling. But why? Because visually and conceptually, it's a game, not a casino. No chips, no roulette, but in essence, it's all the same. The probability of winning, the drop table, the feeling of unpredictability. In some ways, it's even worse than a casino. At least in a casino, there is a clear understanding of losing or winning. In games, you get an item, but is it always worth it? Or is it just another useless piece of junk? One of the most striking examples is FIFA and its famous packs. Players spend thousands of dollars to get the player they need, and then a new season starts and everything resets. Progress, money, emotions. Everything resets, but the player comes back. Because the reward cycle was built correctly. The mechanics are based on neuropsychology. Our brain loves rewards, especially unexpected ones. Every time we get a rare item, dopamine is released. We feel joy, even if we logically understand that we just spent money on nothing. This is the same chemistry that works in people in casinos and betting enthusiasts. And this is where it gets really scary. After all, games are what used to be an escape from the world. A place where you can switch off, relax, forget about work or school. And now they have become another mechanism for pumping out resources. And it's not just about money. Time, attention, emotional resources, all of this is now capitalized. Remember how we used to rejoice at new levels, unexpected discoveries, plot twists? Now, the main joy for many players is that it fell out. This has shifted the very essence of games. They have become a lottery from a process, and even in story-driven games, elements of donation have begun to appear. Remember how Ubisoft started selling experience boosters in Assassin's Creed? Or how in Diablo Immortal, leveling up turns into a bottomless pit without which you can't get out of it. Companies justify themselves. They say, we give a choice. No one forces you to pay. You can get everything for free. It's just longer. But let's be honest, longer often means months or years. And the psychology of the player is such that he wants it here and now, especially if he has friends who have already bought everything and are running around with ultimate guns. Here we are no longer talking about the game, but about social pressure. And this is another problem. Donating is becoming not just a choice, but a necessity, so as not to feel like a beggar. But to understand how we got to this model, it's worth rewinding a bit. Donations didn't appear out of nowhere. They have their own rather curious history. It all started with the emergence of free-to-play games, that is, free ones. The idea was almost noble, to give everyone the opportunity to play without paying a penny. This was especially true in countries where people didn't have extra money for licenses. In the 2000s, the first mass online games that didn't require purchase began to appear in Asia, especially in Korea and China Lineage, Ragnarok Online, and the like. But, in order to somehow make money, developers introduced paid goodies, cosmetics, experience boosters, rare items. It seemed harmless then. You pay, you get a visual bonus or level up a little faster, and most importantly, you knew exactly what you were buying, donations were direct, you paid, you got. No randomness, no casino. But business is a tough thing. Developers quickly realized that selling the finished product is profitable, but selling hope is even more profitable. This is how loot boxes appeared, boxes with random contents. First in Asia, then around the world. Europe and the US adopted this model with enthusiasm, especially mobile developers. Now, even if the player did not buy anything, he saw how unlucky he was. And this fueled the excitement. The key turning point was the success of games like Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, and then Genshin Impact. They showed that millions of players are willing to pay a little, but regularly. And if before companies earned once when buying a game, now they can cut money forever. Every week, every month. Battle passes, temporary promotions, limited banners, each of these elements puts pressure on the player. Buy now, otherwise you will lose forever. Teenagers are especially vulnerable to this. Their financial thinking is just forming, and emotions are already at their peak. They want to be like everyone else, to keep up, to shine. And then a beautiful skin, a rare character, an exclusive weapon, and all this can be obtained for money. And if at first parents pay, then later they themselves begin to save, chip in, look for workarounds. But isn't this a direct path to financial irresponsibility? Isn't this the same thing that parents fight against by prohibiting access to casinos? But games are not subject to the same restrictions. Although in essence it is the same, only wrapped in a softer and more harmless shell. The industry knows this and continues to use it, especially mobile games. Their models are built on maintaining attention and slow but constant involvement in payments. Everything there works on the principle of get it and you will pay for the rest of your life. Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, Raid Shadow Legends, they all integrate payments so that the player does not even notice how he gradually becomes donation dependent. So what is the result? We have come to a world where games have become not a leisure, but an investment platform. Where gamers are not just players, but consumers who need to be retained as long as possible and monetized as much as possible. And while we think that we are just having fun, we find ourselves in the same trap as casino players. And now that we have figured out the reasons, the question arises, what to do about it? Is it possible to enjoy games at all without succumbing to this trap? The answer is yes, it is possible. But this requires awareness and responsibility. You need to understand how the system works, where you play, and where you are manipulated. Buy what gives you pleasure and not what is imposed. Don't fall for chance, deadlines, uniqueness. All this is an illusion of scarcity, artificially created so that you pay. And most importantly, remember, the game should give joy, not addiction. Of course, if you earn enough and have some extra money, you can donate a little for some entertainment, but even so, you shouldn't dive into it head on. And if you watch this video to the end, you've already become one step smarter. Maybe next time, when you see a great offer or a holiday case, you'll think, is it worth it?